Welcome everybody. Today's presentation by Professor and Minister Márcia Lima is hosted by the Center for Latin and Latinx Studies, part of the Dispossessions Project, generously funded by the Mellon Foundation and directed by my fearless leader, Dr. Tulio Faletti. I have a particular joy and enthusiasm in introducing Professor Márcia Lima to our community. After so many previous efforts to bring her to Penn were short-circuited for one reason or another. 2 years ago, 1 week before she was scheduled to begin her appointment as visiting scholar at Perry Worldhouse, she was appointed by the current president of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, to join his government. Our loss was Brazil's gain. So I'm especially glad that she's been able to squeeze out 2 days out of her busy international schedule to visit with us. As they say in Brazil, enfim, ela chegou, or finally. Márcia Lima is National Secretary for Affirmative Action Policies and Combating Racism of the Ministry of Racial Equality in Brazil. She's a professor in the Department of Sociology at the University of São Paulo. She's also senior researcher at the Brazil Center for Analysis and Planning, CEBRAP known in Portuguese, where she coordinates the Afro-Research Group, CEBRAP, on race, gender, and racial justice. Professor Lima obtained her Ph.D. in the Department of Sociology at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in 2001, under the supervision of the pioneering sociologist and demographer Carlos Hassenbach. She's held several prominent fellowships in the United States, a postdoctoral fellowship at Columbia University in 2011 and 2012, and was a visiting fellow at the Afro-Latin American Research Institute and the Hutchins Center for African and African American Studies at Harvard University at 2016-2017. Her intellectual agenda focuses on race and gender inequalities. She has extensive experience coordinating research on racial disparities and related topics. She has published and supervised students in the following areas: labor markets, affirmative action, Black feminism, and the Black radical movement. And she's been a big friend and supporter of me for many years, so I'm doubly grateful that she's here. Her talk is entitled Affirmative Action and Combating Racism Policies, Challenges of the Brazilian Racial Equality Agenda. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Mike, for this kind. I look good in your words. Thank you.
Good.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, Tulia. Thank you, Kat, for everything. Where's Kat? But so it's
everywhere.
Yeah,
it's like God.
Yeah.
Go this.
So I'm going to talk to you today about my new position. And I moved from the academy and to the government. It's not easy movement to do, but I think it was time to do something for my country, especially after Bolsonaro's government, that nightmare we had for 4 years. And now we're trying to reconstruct the racial agenda in Brazil, racial equality agenda. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this, about the history of the racial equality agenda in the Brazilian government before the creation of this ministry. So you have the secretary for the CEP, it's a secretary for promotion racial equality in Brazil, and to the Minister of Racial Equality. And I'd like to highlight the importance of this legacy, its legacy for this moment. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure and the mission of this new ministry. And I'm going to spend more time in my own agenda because it's easier for me to talk about what I'm doing now. And I have 2 boards in my secretary. The first one is Affirmative Action Policies, and the second one is Fighting and Overcoming Racism Policies. So I'm going to show you something, what was possible to do until now, and considering the structure of Brazilian government. So I'd like to back a little bit in the time and talk about 2003, when the Brazilian government, in the first term of President Lula, he created in March in this moment, the special secretary with the status of minister And the history of the secretary, special secretaries, is very important when you look at the whole of the Black movement and its connection with the Labour Party and also this new government and the first term of Lula. And the literature about this moment highlights two factors to understand the creation of CEPI, and the first one is the growth of racial issues in the federal international sphere. We created this after Durban Conference, so that's the Durban Conference is a very important turn point in Brazilian debate about race. And also you have a strong mobilization within the PT and by the Black militants. And it's the interaction with the core of the government power, especially the current articulation, was very, very, very important to change how racism and racial equality started to starting in that moment. So we had during the 90s, we had a lot of events, especially leading by Black movement in Brazil. And we had formal complaining international courts about the racism in Brazil, and all the things contribute to create this new secretary. I used to say, okay, we had Lula in 2003, but if you had another president, they must add this agenda because it was imperative in Brazil at the moment because of Durban to create a new status for racial equality in Brazil, in debate about this. And so CEPI has had different moments in the government, but until 2015, CEPI was really stronger. But after 2015, when you have the coup or the impeachment in 2016, you can choose if you want. I know I can't talk this anymore because now I'm here. So it's impeachment. And when CEPI, they put together racial equality, human rights, and women policy in the same ministry. And we don't have more the same status until now. Then we created the Ministry of Racial Equality. So, and in the 2015, the last strong report from CEPI, they elected four important lines about racial equality policy in Brazil. The first one is affirmative action policies, policy for traditional communities like quilombolas, the reduction of Black youth homicides, and also the federal articulation for the promotion of racial equality. So, and you look at so this four lines, is a very, very strong structure for the new phase of the racial equality agenda. I show you our structure. So if you look at the idea of affirmative action policies is here, and the Black youth homicides, reduction of Black is part of the board of confrontation and overcoming racism. We have the Secretary for Quilombos and Traditional People, and also we have Secretary for National System for the Promotion of Racial Equality, includes the Interfederative Articulation Board. And the idea of this interfederative articulation is create and monitoring policy, racial equality policies, not only in the federal government, but also in states, government, and municipalities. So it's that's the idea of this secretary. So you can see we have a legacy from Sapir, and also the four line is still the base of the structure of this new minister. And I'm going back here. So, but what did we find when in the beginning of the year when we start to this new minister? And we have a report transition from the team who work on the transition to the new government. And that's the legacy we receive from Bolsonaro's government. The lack of monitoring is of the public policies for racial equality. We found a lot of lack of monitoring for the quotas law in the higher education, for the public service quota law, also for the famous 10.639, for understand Portuguese law, about teaching of Afro-Brazilian indigenous history and culture, about the Quilombola social agenda. It's a very weakened articulation because the Quilombola social agenda involved in the past several ministries and actions for education, culture, landing, a lot of programs, and this articulation of these intersectoral efforts. The same question for stagnation of land regularization. There is no continued action for to combat lethal violence against Black youth. This, for me, it's the very, very more difficult situation because you have the Minister of Justice during the Bolsonaro's government, the Sérgio Moro, and he created policies against Black people, against youth people. So it's not on a dismantling or weakening, but they create a regressive agenda about this debate. And when we assume in January, the budget cut for racial equality is 94%. So we have only 4 million reais. When we started the government, the ministry, the budget was 4 million reais. It's ridiculous. So we can change this. We got more budget, more money, but that's the situation when we assumed the government. And now the minister Aniele Franco, now as you know, the sister of Marielle Franco was assassinated in 2018. And we start to work in these major priorities about right to life and dignity, right to land, memory and reparation, and also education and inclusion. So our agenda must to organize in these 4 lines. And that's our structure. I will show you. And until now, we have much more action than I can present in the time you have, but I'd like to highlight some of them. So the first one is the creation of 4 interministerial working groups. In Brazil, it's a very, very common way to start public policies. It's not a working group, so we need to present concrete results and actions. When you finish, we have 6 months to each. I think the decree is about 180 days, it's approximately 6 months. When you finish this time, you have to present a program or a plan for each agenda you have. So in my secretary now, we just finished the National Affirmative Action Program. We're going to launch in November 10th. Also in my secretary, you have Alive Black Youth. We're going to launch the huge program, a huge plan for Black youth in Brazil, the same date, November 12th, because we are the Black Month, the Black Conscientious Month. Or the secretary work on confronting regional racism. The secretary for Quilombos and traditional people, they are responsible with the Ministry of Human Rights and Citizenship. They are responsible for this group. And you have the Cais do Valongo, title of World Heritage Site, about memory and recognition. I know you like this point. So they are working on this Cais do Valon group. It's a very important debate about memory and recognition. Also, we create the Aquilomba Brazil program. Is a kind of resumption of Quilombola Brazil, that Brazil Quilombola. There's the older program called Brazil Quilombola. It's land title is a very important thing, but not only you have the access to land, but also poverty, education, culture, memory, and health debate. We try to create a program include all these issues, and it's very intersectorial agenda as well. And actually, Quilombola, the debate and the policy for Quilombola people in Brazil now, we have about 4 or 5 ministers who work with specific agenda for this. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change, the Minister of Agrarian Development, Minister of Culture, Minister of Education, and Minister of Racial Equality. And they have a specific board or coordination work on Quilombola's agenda. And also we have the discussion about Amazonia Negra, Black Amazon. And it's a very important agenda for us to connect the debate about Quilombola, Amazonia, land recognition. But it's not easy because access to land is it can be so violent as the debate about public security in Brazil, and especially in the small cities, and have a lot of violence because of land. So we lost now recently a very important leadership and Quilombola leadership in Bahia, Mãe Bernadette, and it was a very violent crime in front of their granddaughter. It was in grandson. That's very, very violent and situation. And the President Lula changed the law and created racial injury as a crime of racism. And you have a special program with Ministry of Women to a program Women to Live Without Violence. And there is some specific conditions and policies for women victims of violence. So special conditions for employment, job and education, and mental health support. And we tried to restart the JPER agreement because this agreement was signed in March 2008. And it was the first bilateral agreement addressing racism involved Brazilian government and the United States government. We have more action, but I don't have time to address all the things. This man actually started when you have the Brazil, like here, 100 days government, you have to present some action. So all of this action we create in the first 100 days in Brazil. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more about my agenda and my. So about the National Secretary for Affirmative Action and Fight and Overcoming Racism, I have a joke about the secretary. The size of the name is the size of my problem, my mission, because it's a lot to do. It's involve a lot of things in this. I'm going to highlight some Black Youth program and also the Affirmative Action program. If you have questions, I don't know, it's finish it, but some specific question you can say. So about the Board of Affirmative Action Policy, driven by Ana Venturini, very, very wonderful person and it's very young people. I work with very young people, and she's a political science and she has a Ph.D. on affirmative action graduate programs. And the main programs I can highlight here for you today is we are working now, we have two very important quotas law in Brazil. The first one is about higher education. We just finished the review of this law. So President Lula, you sanctioned the review the next Monday. And the second one is the law for federal public service. You have quotas for who apply for this position. But this law is the 10 years law, so we have to renew this law. It's not a revision, it's a renew until June to the next year. So we are working a lot because we have to pass in Senate and the Congress, so we have to work on this. So you have a research and evaluation about the implementation of the law, because we need this evaluation to understand what you can change in the law, make this law better. And we just finished the new test of this law, and are going to change for example, today it's 20% of quotas, and we're going to up to 30%. We are going to change some. It's a very, very specific question about, because this law is a very controversial one, because I don't know why, but it's very easy to fraud, to avoid to apply this regulation. For example, you have to apply the law, you have to have at least 3 positions or more. So, for example, for the professor selection in universities, they never put together a lot of vacancies because they must use the quotas. So we try to create several ways to avoid the institution to skip of the law. So we work a lot in training for public services. So we create an exclusive edition for Black people. This Lidera Gov is a kind of training for public service in Brazil, especially people who are going to, they are in higher position. So you need to prepare Black people to occupy this position. And we have a new program for scholarships for Black, Indigenous, Quilombola, and Gypsy women. It's Beatriz Nascimento program, Atlântica. And it's a Ministry of Science Technology. We work together so it's a postdoctoral and doctoral sandwich for only for Black women, Indigenous, Quilombola, and Gypsy. Also, we invest money in a partnership with the Ministry of Science Technology to strengthen the institutional scientific initiation program. It's a very, very important program in Brazil for undergraduate students to access the scientific information. And also, we have a very good partnership with the Attorney General Office, and we create a program for Black lawyers to prepare for this career. And also we have more scholarships for foreign affairs in the Instituto Rio Branco for vocation for diplomacy. The vocation for diplomacy in Brazil is very, very elitist process. So we don't have a lot of white and Black people. And we started this program a long time ago, but we put more money to have more scholarships and trying to put more Black people inside the Instituto Rio Branco. And we are going to launch the National Affirmative Action Program in the end of this month. And what's this program? And this program is it's the kind of guidelines and And also this program give legal support for every institution, public or private institution, who decide to apply any kind of affirmative action. So definitions, different types of affirmative action, not only quotas, because in Brazil, quotas and affirmative action programs the same thing, it's not the truth. So it's very important you have a formal and official documents from the Brazilian government to support any kind of affirmative action. And I'm going to highlight this decree. We created this decree. It's why my secretary did this decree in the March. It was our first decree in the government. So what's happening in Brazil? We have in the public structure of the Brazilian administration, we have we say this leadership positions for the public service career, but also for myself. So I have now a leadership position. I'm from the university, but I moved to the government. So I am one of this person. So you create, it's not a quota, it's a goal. And each federal public administration has to trying to go to this goal. It's a 30% for Black people in leadership position. The levels we have, the levels is 1 to 17, but we separate 1 to 12 and 13 to 17. So my position is 17, and so every ministry, every public institution, federal public institutions have to put Black people, 30% of the Black people in this position until December 2025. And it's a way to create more diversity, not only in our public service, but specifically in the leadership position, like my position. So, and you decided to separate these two groups because we know Brazil, so they're going to put all these Black people in the level 1, 2, and say, yes, we have Black people in the leadership position, but in the lower position. So we try to guarantee in the really high position we have more Black people, and that's the minimum percentage must be reached by December 2025. The other board is the Board of Fight and Overcome Racism Policies. So again, we have a lot of actions. I'm going to, about the Black youth, we have a partnership with Ministry of Justice to create assistance for guidelines to train criminal enforcement officers in Brazil. And also we have a new program about national strategy on drug policy for the Black and peripheral population, because in Brazil until now, we don't have any connection about drug policies and racism. We can't face drug policies without talk about racial racism, without about police violence. So we created this new program, this new strategy, with this National Secretary for Drug Policy from the Ministry of Justice. About the training and scholarship, you have this Caminhos Americanos. The idea is a South-South exchange program involving students from education to, it's a short-term program, just a way to exchange actions and capacity to, especially about the racism in the education and especially in the elementary education. And also we have partnership with these countries and institutions, Angola, Cabo Verde, Mozambique, and Colombia. I think it's not here, but the South-South program. The JPER part of the JPER agreement is leading by my secretary, and we have health, education, violence, and culture. These four main actions involve the JPER agreement until now. And we have a support for Hip Hop Culture National Award for the hip hop, and we start include the debate about and the questions about the violence in Brazil. We start a special program for mothers and family members victims of the state violence. We start with Bahia and Rio de Janeiro, and pilot program, and we're going to extend this program for the next years. And I don't know what that's. The last one, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Alive Black Youth Plan, that the plan we are going to launch in November 12th. So the idea is the reducing lethal violence against the Black people, especially the young one. And we have a partnership with the President of the Republic through the National Youth Secretary. And that the steps, the program. So we create the group, the interministerial group in March. In the last 6 months, we had a lot of meetings with these ministers, 50 ministers involved. We also visit each capital in Brazil, 27 capitals, and we listed more than 6,000 young people. And the registered this listing, and they highlight all this public safety and education as the priority for these young people. And the most difficult part of this plan is the interfederative agreement, because we can't talk about public safety and without talk with the states and municipalities. So we have to negotiate with Rio de Janeiro government and Bahia's government, and that's the difficult part of this plan, because the federal government has little power to face the everyday life on the violence. So we need to create a debate, a discussion with the state, and it's not easy, because especially if you think about Rio de Janeiro, nowadays you have Claudio Castro government. The governor is, coming from Bolsonaro. I'm trying to choose my words here. So it's very hard. I particularly visit several states and talk to Secretary for Youth, or Secretary for Racial Equality, Secretary of Justice, when trying to create a kind of agreement, but it's work in progress. Also, we need data, so we need research about the letalities, and you need a baseline indicators to monitor the program. So now we just received a consulting with a new data from lethal violence in Brazil, and the idea is everything's and going to start the plan next year, but we need to finish the planning now to launch and start the policies. And I think this the general challenge and the main challenge is for us that's how you can make a state policy, not a government policy, about racial equality. So we needed to work hard in the institutionalization of the Ministry of Racial Equality, because it can't be 4 years minister. So we have to think how you can put the racial equality in the state agenda. And this is our mission. Part of the way to to do this is work on the transversality and the dialogue with other ministers. So, for example, in this year, we had the budget planning. So our minister participate in every debate, which 37 ministers you have in Brazil now. 37 is a lot, but that's what we have now. And we discuss racial equality, which one of them. So it's a way to try to also need budget and need resource, but not only resource, but the way to execution this money, because it's a very hard to spend Brazilian public money. And the human resource and our team is very small. We need a structure to do this. And the new minister do have the same structure as the Minister of Education, Minister of Justice or Health. So it's hard for us to create a minister from the scratch. Also, that's the last but not less important challenge is all the political process involved in these policies and approve, implement, and monitoring policies. In the approval, sometimes we need to discuss, to talk to and the legislative house and congressmen, congresswomen, and we have a very conservative Congress now in Brazil. For example, when you have to pass the review of the quotas law, I spent 13 hours talk to different congressmen, senators. I spent 1 hour of my life talk to Sérgio Moro about how important is this, and we have to shake some hands, and talk about that. That's important, and so it is not easy because all this is a political process and involve different kind of parties, and you have a very, very strong conservative movement, and you must talk to them, you must negotiate to them. So the political process involving these policies for racial equalities, it's not easy, but we try. Okay, so pray for me, and I'm here to let's talk a little bit more about this. What's going on now?
Questions?
Thank you very much. By the way, I'm Lucas Martins, also from Brazil. I'm not from Penn, but I study at Temple University, which is not that far from here. I am personally involved with a couple of international projects connecting Latin America and the United States, and it is so exciting to read anything related to JPER. And I'm really curious to know exactly how institutions like this one, or even Temple University, how we can partner with the Brazilian government and take this opportunity to do more projects. So we are here to listen and to partner.
Okay. You can collect 2, 3 questions.
My name is Guilherme, obrigado pela presença. I think Penn as an institution is very concerned about collecting data and making data-driven decisions. I was just curious to learn more about how you measure success of all your agenda, your programs, and if you could mention some examples of metrics or key performance indicators that you use to measure, the overall impact of your projects.
Okay, I'm going to start to warm up the debate. About JPER, we have in the beginning of the project, so the JPER involves the Brazilian government and Brazilian civil society, and here the same. We have the first meeting, only just the government parts, and we decide to these 4 lines to work on, I said before, cultural, health, education, and violence, I think. And I don't know how I think it's important to look at how the Draper here as a civil society, an American civil society people and Black movement or other movements, they decide to work. It's a very open agenda. We don't have much until now, but in my secretary, we start to draft some proposal, and to especially about education. I work on education and violence, but other secretaries work on other agenda like religious and racism. I had a meeting in May during the ONU, the Afro-Descendant Forum, and it's very interesting because we have a lot of Brazilian people lives here. They want to work on this agenda as Brazilian but live in the United States. So my idea is trying to map in this kind of institution, Brazilian people, Brazilian movement here, to do a connection with us in Brazil, to start to create some kind of partnership, but we need to find a common agenda. You know, I think, for example, racial violence. I think you can work together on this. Education and health is a very difficult because Brazil have a huge public system. Here you don't have this. So the agenda for health is completely different in Brazil and here. So in my opinion, we need to find more common agenda and we can work together. And other agenda, it's difficult. But we're the very beginning of the debate, but we're going to present a proposal. And also, I think that's important to mapping the Brazilian initiatives here to make this work. So it's not a good answer, but that's how I have until now. About the evidence, I'm a sociologist, so as a sociologist, as a social scientist, all my public policies in this agenda, we have a research, and I work in a lot of data to implement policies. And in Brazil, have some things difficult. For example, in the last 2 years, I lead a huge project about affirmative action in the public university in Brazil. But now I cannot use the same information to create the policy because I need formal data, you know. So we can hire consulting for the ministry to create the same data because I can't use the data produced not for the government. I don't know. Do you understand?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So that's crazy. So we lost a lot of time. We create the same results today. These are official results. And so now in the beginning, this year, we have now maybe the beginning of the 2024, you have this data. But also, I have a project, a mission, a dream, I don't know. How can I say? This is, we need, for me, it's the priority to have better data to work on. For example, administrative data like the Brazilian statistics is really good. If you think about IBGE, the formal statistics, the IBGE statistics, it's pretty good. But when look at the administrative data like Sistema do SUS, Data SUS, or even the education data, they are not so good, especially about the information about race. For example, for this decree about the goals for the leadership in the high position, the government, we had to change the way they answer and they the question about race in the system, because the question about race in the government system didn't use the IBGE, the official categories. When I discovered that, it's unbelievable. We don't have in the Brazilian, the federal system, the same official categories. So we changed the categories. We did a new census of the public service, and the census finished in July. So now you have a data. It's compatible with the official categories, and now I have information to implement better policies. Also, we took off the no information. I don't want information by race or color. Now people must to fill this information in the system. So in July, in August, we received a new data with official categories and no underreporting information. We cut off we received so many complaints about it, so many complaints. The official categories, I don't recognize myself in this official category, sorry, that we have today. And the census escolar, the same problem. And we found 100% of schools with all white, all black, all brown. So we need to work on this. I want to create a special program to train and to explain for the people who work on this data, how important is the information, because without good data, I can do good policies. That would be my my advertisements. I want to create advertisement for people who works in range this information, fill this information, because most of them, for example, in the census escolar, it's not a self-declaration, and sometimes there are other very important database from Ministry of Employment, and the HISE annual report for the information about the companies in Brazil. There is a person responsible to fill that's the call of all people in the, so sometimes they use a photo, or that is no, it's not a careful information. So I have a plan to the next year. You have a different workshops with specialists and public managers to work and collect better data to guide us in the public policy for racial equality. So I think the order wants to verify information that's about the Ministry of Justice, the InfoPain, that's information about the people in the incarceration people in Brazil. That's crazy. It's a kind of data you can't use. It's not safe to use that information, because you used to say we have 70% of the incarceration in Brazil are black. I don't know, because the data is very, very, very complicated. So for me, my opinion, it should be a priority for us to invest in the quality of our information.
Sneak a question, comment in. I'm sure most people in the room don't know that you've been a pioneer in many ways. You were the first tenured Black woman professor in the Department of Sociology at the University of São Paulo, no?
Yeah, now my department became 100% white when I leave, when I left for the government. Now they are white again. Yeah.
And so, you've worn different hats. So you were a scholar, teacher, policy advocate, and now representative of government. What are some of the tensions you find in the government between people who come from the social movements and people who come from political parties or prior government positions? Because I know that was a tension before in the previous Lula administration, but also with Dilma.
Yeah, that's very tension, because there is the tension is as a specialist, I have the theory, that I listen all the time. You have the theory about racial inequality, but you don't have the experience in the fight against racism, the fight against inequality. That's a kind of tension. But Brazil has changed a lot because especially about the Black movement, also the women movement, they went to the universities like me, so they got Ph.D. So we have more people now from the movement who got Ph.D. or master degree in Brazil, and I think the tension is into the government, but also into the academy, because now you have more Black students in the university in Brazil. You have more activists in the university in Brazil, and they have changed completely the demand. For example, course about race and more Black professors. And I think the academy in Brazil today is a very, very tense environment because of all this change. But in the government, it's a little bit different. But in my experience, that's I always have the label of she came from the academy and how much you know about the real stuff, like that's I think that's one kind of idea of academy. It's not true, especially for me, but I understand the I understand the tension. And often have the another tension we have in the government, especially after Bolsonaro's government, is the public service career and the people like me. I have a position, but I'm not from the federal career, and people look like and see, she worked during the Bolsonaro's government. Can I trust them? So we have to trust them, because in some ministries like health or education, these ministers survive because of this public service, because they work a lot. They save information and go and take it for the home. That's real, because then they decide to delete a lot of information. Yeah, especially the Fundação Cultural Palmares and the health during the pandemic. I know a lot of people save the data and hide in their place, and now when they have I have the data. Oh, thanks God, someone saved the information. That's happened. That's crazy. And I met a guy saying that I am one of the save a lot of information, and now I give back to the government because they pagaram, they
Turned off.
turn off information. A lot of information, very important information. That's a crime. But okay, that's another discussion.
Got here too. Any other questions?
Obrigado, professora. So I guess my question is more, I was following for some friends that are activists there that were really involved with the process of the renewal in the Congress of affirmative action law. I guess was just curious to hear a little bit more about how the process was for you and the team.
And my secretary supports the Dandara, Deputada Dandara, a congresswoman, very, very young, and she's 29 years old. She's smart, she's very connected, and we work with her and the review of the law, the report on the review. And Dandara did a good job with the articulation with the conservative parties to approve the review. And I think that review we could approve in this moment in Brazil. Maybe we can change more, but we included quilombolas. We trying to change the minimum wage,
Salary minimum.
Yeah, that's the law is a 1.5 minimum wage, and now it's a 1 minimum wage for defining the class. What else? And that the very important change you have, that's all students, including the quotas beneficiary, they are apply as a ampla concorrência. I don't know this
Universal.
universal. And after that, we're going to fill out the quotas. I think they don't understand because they approved this so easy. I think they didn't understand what's happened because it's a huge transformation because quota in the first version of the law is the ceiling, and now it's the base. So it's much better. You can include more Black people and from the public school and the low class in Brazil now with the new version. It's the new version. I think that's the most important change we have in the law is you can get more people if you have grade to pass as universal competition, and after that we can fill the quotas. And what else we changed this law? I think that's the most important change, and because you have some bureaucratic details about the system, the SISU, Universal Selection System. But I think it was, so Dandara did a good job. So we spent I think and the other thing, and I did this not as a secretary, but as intellectual work on this agenda, we push this renew for this government, because if you have to vote this during Bolsonaro's government, it was a nightmare. And I think we couldn't renew, that's not a renew, but to review the law properly. It's better to do this now. So we trying to, it has a huge debate. It's so renew or review. That's not, so for the higher education, it's a review. For the quotas for public service, it's a renew. So it's very important. It's a very different situation, but I think the most important thing we did is take this debate from the Bolsonaro agenda.
Can I ask something? Hi, my name is Ana Carolina. I'm also Brazilian too. So how is the communication between like CP and the other ministries? And the other question is, how long does it take to the presidential palace to approve all the actions that you propose, or like CP propose?
Now it's not CP, it's Minister of Racial Equality. Yeah.
Sorry.
How long?
How long does it take to approve all the actions that you propose?
Depends on what kind of actions, because for example, this decree, it's a political negotiation with the Casa Civil and the presidents. So you don't have to present this for the Congress, for example. The presidential decree, it's easier because you have the agreements inside of the government. It's easier, but not so easy. And for example, the renewal of the quotas for public service, I'm very concerned about the time, because we finished the tests and we sent to the presidents. Now they're going to the Senate and after to the Congress. So that's can take 6-8 months for this. It's a long time. It's all about negotiation, and because as a presidential law come from the executive, they have priority. So that's the way you can guarantee no interruption of this law. And what's your other question? First question.
How is the conversation between me and the other ministries? Because I
So-
understand that we need a public policy as a result. of these conversations?
Yeah, so we have good partnerships like Minister of the we have a crucial minister like the Management and Innovation, MGI. SUSTERDWEC is a very, very important partnership. Minister Aniele Franco is a very, very strong woman, very strong person. He has a lot of recognition about the history of her family, and so he's a very strong minister. So it's easy for her to make this connection, and it's not about it's a political situation. Also, we have a great discussion with Minister of Justice. Minister Fábio Dino is very nice and very good for us to. We have a lot of programs together, and Minister Dino has a lot of Black people work for him. A lot of very important Black people work for him, and so depends on the agenda, depends how we will, what we're going to change. But my goal is expand the debate with economics, planning, budget, you know. And it's easier to talk with social agendas like education, health, social development, human rights, women, indigenous people. But I want to talk to Fernanda Haddad, I want to talk to Simone Tebet, you know, that they have the money, they have the pen. So that's a very important discuss about budgets and planning.
Can I make two related questions? Actually, I wanted to follow up in the previous question to ask you, how is your relationship with the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs that you just mentioned? If you could tell us a little bit more how that relationship is and if you do anything together. But my second question has to do also with this issue that you brought up at the end of your conversation in terms of which parts of government are what some people call the soft rights versus hard rights. So, you know, soft rights had to do, as you say, with human rights, with you know, other rights that are not necessarily costly. But when you start talking about land, or when you start talking about, you know, the economy, then those are what, you know, we could think about as hard rights. And in talking, you know, in listening to do your presentation about quotas, as far as I understand, all this has to do with public positions, public employment, and or public education or public health, right? I mean, these are huge, very important sectors. But how about the economy? Are there any incentives, the private sector, I mean, are there any incentives that the government could, you know, put forward for the private sector to also have more racially aware hiring, for instance?
Okay. So I like the ideas of soft rights and hard rights. So it's land and education in Brazil. It's historically hard rights. And when it started the quotas law, and until today, the resistance about this agenda is still hard, but I think the results of the program are so good. Even people against the program, they must recognize that it works. So I think the result is our ally to make this policy move on. No, I think that's because land education is still the hard right for us. Health is hard as well, but as you have the SUS, this kind of system, universal system itself, and we have to face the institutional racism inside the health system. It's it's in one of my agenda for the next year. So, but when we talk about racism, it's hard. Even into the government, into the people in the left parties, even in the progressive movements, when they say this is racism, we need to face racism. They don't want to talk about racism. They don't want to talk about racism at all. So at all. And so we create a special program to face racism. We have some resistance all the time. So it's not only about right and soft right, but how you approach the problem. You know. So when we talk about that, it's racist. Wow. So that's hard to. We need to face the racism inside the government. People say it's not easy. So that's my point about this. About the labor market, yes, we have some programs for private sectors. We start with the mixed economy, the mixed company like Banco do Brasil, Caixa Econômica, and we start to diversity committee and racial diversity programs for trainees and several initiatives for Black people, Black women in special program for financial. We're going to work on this in the next year. And in Brazil, we have the Lula's has a Conselhão, a huge board with 100 people, and there's people from civil society, from companies, and famous leader, very important leadership in different areas. And we did agreement with this group, and my plan to 2024 is start invite these people. For example, Uber, CEO of Uber is part of this board. So I'm going to talk to her about the diversity program for Uber and understand more about employability for Black people in the system. It's our priority. But I always used to say, if you wanted to demand private sector to do something about racial equality, we must have to do your homework, look at your, this year I decided to look into the federal government and identify bias and gaps about race and trying to not fix, but create some policies for the federal public administration. And now we can demand for the public sector some measures about the racial inequality and racial discrimination. And I think that's my point, that the way I'm trying to deal with this agenda.
And the relationship with the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs
Yes.
or Peoples. What is your relationship with them?
Sonia Guajajara from the indigenous. She is a very, very important, we have a lot of projects together, and Minister Aniele Franco is very close to her, and we work in the same building. I have a joke about the building because we are in the C block in the ministers, and you have the Minister of Women, Racial Equality, Indigenous People, Agrarian Development. So that's the most left building because all these progressive ministers in the same building, it's not safe. Okay,
Thank you.
Question back?
I have one comment. I'd like to invite us to take one step back and think about how important it is, the existence of the Ministry of Racial Equality. Right? It's not everywhere that we have such
Yes.
such an entity and the symbolism that it by in itself, despite the policies or in addition to the policies, that message to society. And so both for Brazil and for the Americas as a whole.
Yes.
Right? And and say how much I appreciate the work that you are all doing, especially after the dark ages, you know, if you will, that we've had. So the existence in itself, I think it's very meaningful. And just to see where we are in this country in those terms and globally, I think it's something that we should
Okay.
celebrate and thank you.
Thank you. I agree with you. That's a huge step in the Brazilian debate about racism and public policy for racial equality. Thank you.
First, thank you for coming. I have a question regarding, so you talked a lot about the, you guys' agendas regarding, a lot of it had to do with like higher education and how important that is, and sometimes quotas, but also investments in the higher education of underprivileged members of our society. Is basic education, maybe K through 12, also included in your plans? Is there more of a priority than higher education or less of a priority than higher education? And why?
Okay. It's not a question of priority because the Ministry of Education, they must take care of the agenda more than us. But we have a lot of projects together, and now we are working on this law to teaching Afro-Brazilian and indigenous history. And we are trying to create a way to monitoring this law because the school, they don't apply the law, and we need to improve the monitoring of the law. So it's one of the partnership we have. The second one is about Brazil has the biggest, I need to help in the translation, that's Programa Nacional do Livro Didático. This national program for elementary books for teaching, something like that. It's because the Brazilian government, they pay for every student to receive the schooler
Textbook.
textbook. Yeah. So it's a lot of money, and we have to evaluate this textbook, because sometimes we still have a very racist approach or traditional history about Black people and about slavery. So that's the idea, is we want to have more influence in when you choose this book for the kids. And also I have a plan, mission, or goal, dream, is to use more the traditional knowledge from the traditional communities about themselves in the elementary school. So kids maybe have more access to their traditional histories, about the traditional history. And I receive a lot of very interesting textbooks or tell story books about for example, if you live in a very small city and there rural community or traditional community, they need to know more about their own history. So I'm trying to work on this agenda. It's impossible. They can't compete with the huge publishers. So I think I'd like to create a special financial support for this kind of knowledge, the traditional knowledge about this small communities. And I want to work in the very, very, unfortunately in Brazil, it's a very new agenda. That's the primeira infância.
Early childhood.
Yes, the 0 to 6 and access to That's very important. If you don't wanna, I remember the Frederick Douglass decided it's easier to create a strong child than fix a broke man, you know, like I love this idea. So we need to invest more in the first, for example, you don't have the rate participation, this lower level in education is very, very low in Brazil.
I just have a quick follow-up question to that. You said something very, very important, that it's easier to raise like a strong child than to fix a broken man. That's exactly what I was trying to ask. More so than, of course, teaching Black history in schools and including those contents for everyone to see. Are there any specific plans or goals that you have in mind in order to just increase the quality of earlier education, especially for areas in which that are known to be underprivileged, so that later on, years from now, when those people grow up, you don't have to keep on fighting to approve the same programs that will try to fix them in higher education again.
I don't understand your question. Vinay, help me.
I
What to
don't
do?
know if I understood either.
Let me try and clarify.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks God, not
so,
only me.
What I was trying to ask is, besides just including more about Afro-Brazilian history and textbooks for everyone to see, for example, is there any specific plan to tackle, say, we know that these schools in this sector that have a higher percentage of Afro or indigenous students that go there, they go usually here to this school, and we know that these schools success rate into like getting them to college and other metrics is not as high. Are there any specific policies or any specific plans or goals in order to tackle that, so that they grow to be stronger individuals that have a bigger chance of
Yes,
accomplishing
I
something, so that many years in the future, when these people are adults, we don't have to keep on running the same cycles again and again?
I know. It's a kind of revolution you propose. Yeah. Okay, I understand your point. I think it's more when you talk about this situation, for example, it involves a lot of things like violence. So we have several studies in Brazil. For example, the Favela da Maré, they lose almost 1 month a year without classroom because of violence. So it's not all about the quality of the education, the quality of the teachers, but it's also about the structure of the schools in the Brazilian periphery. So that's involved a lot of things. And I think that our role as Minister of Racial Equality is tell them this is racism. We need to fix this, because this is part of the racism, and how we deal with the periphery schools in Brazil, for example. So it's I think it's a very difficult, because you have to change the way people understand education in Brazil. I had, because now I'm in another position, but I had a lot of fight with the debate about the quality of the education, Okay, you have a serious problem about the quality, but we can't fix the quality without fix the racism, without fix how people treat poor people in the schools. So it's a huge problem. And I agree with you when you talk about affirmative action in higher education. People talk about this not only because it causes a very, very special capital, especially for the Brazilian elite. Access to higher education is a privilege. So that's the reason we have so much debate about higher education, and people don't care about what's happening in the elementary school, you know? And now we have the same question about the high schools, because this moment, I'm very concerned about how many Black people can finish the high school and to access the higher education. after the pandemic, we have the numbers of the students who apply for national examination, the national exam has decreased 50% for the Black people. So my concern is where we have quotas for the higher education, but don't have Black people to fill this position, fill this vacancy, because we don't have Black people finish the high school. So it's one of my concerns as now.
So she's brought up education, which I agree is very important. We, like in our class, we've read a lot of Freire and fellow Brazilian researchers as well. He talks a lot about changing the entire structure of education and getting away from the banking format of sort of implementing information directly into people through textbooks and whatever. Is there a suggested approach from you to completely alter the entire structure and allow for more interactive forms of education?
I'm sorry, can I?
Simplistically, have you guys considered altering or making a large change to the structure of education versus teachers implementing information into children versus children learning collectively?
Yeah, we think, and we did it all the time. We just have a change in the high school, and it was a disaster. So
From going into a collective.
I think he's mentioning Frei, Paulo Freire.
Oh, okay.
Outra ideia de educação.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's I told before, when you talk about education land, they are most difficult area to make changes in Brazil. So they don't want to talk about real changes in education. As you propose now, that's still a huge human capital, and a very, very important way to change the world here. That's to be more. But I think the structure of education is. Sometimes I use that expression. I'm trying to fix a broken bone with a band-aid. Like this. That sometimes I have this kind of feeling, but we need to go to the deep problem. The deep problem of the education that's involved, that the idea, what the goal, that's it's a very difficult change to do in Brazil, and especially if you like that Brazil, the law that make the education as a state yes, a right. It's the 1986. The LDB is in 1986. So before that, the state they didn't have obligation to give education for everyone. So it's less than 50 years we're talking about the whole of the state to provide education for the Brazilian people. So we can imagine how inequality we produced in our history, and if you don't have the obligation to give education for everyone. So we have a lot to do in Brazil when concerned about education. You have a question there.
One more question, take it from the Zoom.
Two questions, one from Theodore and one from Camila.
How do you work with media to promote your project and get support to create awareness? I don't. And I think that's a very important question about media.
It's a student, Camila.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought they were gonna read the one from the chat first.
Camila?
I'm trying to
Can you hear me?
Yes, Camila.
Okay, so yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the conversation. I'm Brazilian as well, so it's nice to have events that talk about Brazil on campus. And well, I have a question about the relationship with other Congress people, because you mentioned that a big part of your job is talking to them and getting the policies that promote racial equity to go through. And I just wanted to ask how those conversations go usually, and how receptive do you think Congress people in Brazil are to those policies, and how do you in general work with them in order to get them to pass?
Okay. And so I'm going for the first question from Theodora. The relation with media, I have a plan to engage more with media. Aniele Franco is a very good on media. She's the most popular minister we have. And we explore this a lot because it's very important, the communication. So because of the communication, we have a public consultation about the priorities to Brazil, and we get the 7th position. It's very nice because we talk about racial equality. So racial equalities, it was on one of them, the 10 most important agenda. We put the racial equality and the 7th position. So I think it's good for us. And also I think we can work on the media to deal with the debate about data we did before. So I want to create some advertisement for people, for public services work on collect data and how important is a good data about race. And we need more information and more advertisement and meet the media about the good results of racial equality policies, for example. I think we can work on this. And I have a good relationship with the SECOM, the Secretary of Communication from the President of the Republic. So we also, Minister Aniele Franco invests a lot, and we're going to launch a new program about communication without racism. And we are going to mobilize the public first. That's my way to think this. The public, because you have a lot of space for the public communication. You have time in the TV. You have a resource for different kind of publicity. So I think we need to work more on this. Camila, thank you for your question. For me, it's a very new in my my life to talk to this kind of people, to talk to politicians, and my strategy is always public policy based on evidence. So I always show them data, information, and analysis about how you can face racial inequality, how this policy has reduced racial inequalities. So, for example, I have this experience with Sérgio Moro about the quotas, and he asked me, show me the data. I have a lot of data. So it's a way to try to create connection with these politicians. But I learned something very curious about Brazilian politicians. Sometimes they decide to create a project law just to send a message for their public. Like they don't have they know the law. So now we have a law against homoaffective marriage. They know that's law, but they have the moment they can take the stand and defend something absurd for his their
Right, constituency.
Constitutions.
Constituency.
Yes, I can say this word. Constituency. Yeah. So that's very common in Brazilian politicians. So, for example, when we approve the review of the quotas law, you have a symbolical voting because they don't want a nominal vote, because they don't want approve or disapprove some kind of law, because it's not good for them. So they have a lot of arrangement to pass law without each congressmen say, I'm in favor, I'm against, because they don't want a disposition. So it's easier than I thought to talk to them. But also we have to decide which politician will decide to spend your energy, because I don't want to talk to Flávio Bolsonaro. I can't change his idea about my project, so I have to select the swing politicians I can think you can
Persuade.
you can persuade them. That's the kind of politician that your time is not, don't waste time with some kind of politicians. And this election is not easy to do, but we have a very good woman, Josie. She's our parliamentary assistant, and she said, Secretary, don't waste your time with and she appointed the conversation with this when we should have trying to convince or present our projects.
Just gonna ask if you're able to convince Sérgio Moro. Were you?
Yeah, I think we can talk someday. It's not because he presented amendments for the law, and we tried to convince him to take this amendment off, and we did. Yeah, because I think he liked the moment, and we received us, and okay, you are very important, so you need to please review your position. And we have Paulo Paim. Paulo Paim is the best politician I ever know. She received everyone like, for Paulo Paim, it doesn't matter the party, it doesn't matter the ideological position. He always tried to convince, he's very kind, he's very gentle. So people love, every senator loves Paulo Paim. Even Flávio Bolsonaro, with all due respect, but I'm voting against. So Paulo Paim is very special. I really like him, and I learned a lot with him. So it's nice.
Okay, thank you very much. You've been working very hard. Thank you very much.